Hello.
Hello. Adam Stafford has recently released his album Taser Revelations.
I think at its heart it is an electronic album. It's crafted with sort of acoustic instruments and real instrument. You know, there's a lot of sort of guitars and a lot of real percussion and that kind of thing in it. But the way it's been sort of crafted together, like the way the guitars are layered on top of each other and repeated, it almost sounds like some kind of heavily affected sample that's just been looped throughout, but it's not. It's an actual, 5 or 6 layers of guitar that are all just really minimal, and they sort of build off each other like Lego.
Like Lego.
Like Lego, because you build stuff with Lego.
If I'd listened to this album when I was like 13, 14, it would have been my gateway album to experimental stuff. Maybe I'd have gotten into Radiohead and Bjork earlier if I'd have listened to this album. Standing on a stool to make me taller. Yeah, track 3.
It wasn't drums. You had sort of percussive fret noises. You had just clanks. It sounded like he was messing about with tins and pots and stuff. There was all this really sort of cool, weird sounds that sort of just did something that would be really cool if I'd said it better. Track number 2 was very synth pop. It was very 80s. There was all these sort of analog synths sort of just bubbling away in the background. Really, really sort of retro sort of feel to it. Almost hippie-ish. Everyone dancing. You can just imagine everyone
sort of
that, being happy and dancing together to it. And it was just really, really nice. The album altogether was very layered. So many instruments without it being crowded, and it went so many different directions. You're listening to it 1 minute and you're sort of getting a really sort of tribal sort of percussion, almost like the King of Limbs, and then you've got 80s synth pop sort of retro disco hippie stuff the next. But it flowed so well that you didn't even sort of realise the massive disparity between these two sounds.
It just worked really well. I just loved that instead of just having loads of layers of different stuff going on, it had loads of layers that intertwined and worked together to create one overall melody. Sometimes vocals were used to sort of give a little bit more depth to the synths with some oohs and ahs, which in places got really sort of alt-rocky, didn't they? The way the lyrics were structured, it was really well crafted. There was sort of a lot of internal rhyme and really sort of rhythmic singing. I loved that there was so much repetition. The fret noises that do what? That was all the way through it. And yet it was still so diverse and still went in all sorts of different directions, even though there was still that same thing holding it together. And I love repetition. I'm a big fan of repetition.
Because it was the right kind of repetition. It's short repetition. It's a really short passage that's just repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated, and it just gets more intense. It's trance-like as opposed to just getting stale.
I think it was track 8. You've got all this circusy stuff going on, and all these sort of weird, called and it was a waltz, and it was like a completely different feel, and yet still fit in with the album. And I really like that. I remember listening to it, and then that happened, and I just sort of smiled. The vocals felt like part of the instrumentation, whereas in a few, which really, really worked. But in a few of the tracks, I feel like because they were what was driving the song forward, they should have been more forward.
I know what you mean. It was a very instrument-based album. And I do know what you mean, but I think it was just a case of the way the vocals were utilised. I don't really think it's a positive or a negative thing. I think it's just a new take on what vocals can do. The vocals were used sort of as an instrument, which was good.
We very much liked it. We thought it was a really, really cool album. And we're not surprised that it's doing so well. If you've gotten this far in the video, thank you so much for sticking around. If you are an independent musician or an unsigned musician or a sort of indie label musician and you would like some support and promotion and you think that you've got something good, please do send your EP or LP to us at sunstopmusic@gmail.com and we'll have a listen, and if we like it, we'll review it. And it'll be here on this channel, and that'll be really cool.